Good evening, Rabbi. Tonight we're going to talk about a very, very important topic, which is the topic of the issue of Lashon Harah, right? That's the idea. So what does that mean? That a person has to be very, very careful not to speak Lashon Harah. Where do we find the prohibition about speaking Lashon Harah? Where is this written in the Torah? It says in Vaikra Yutet, Lo telech rachil be'amecha, right? So what does it mean, Lo telech rachil be'amecha? We're talking about, the Torah is telling you, don't go around and be a gossiper. Going from one place to another. Oh, I heard about this, I heard about that, this, what happened here, what happened there. That's what they told me, this, what happened with this family, with that family, this guy, he's having fights with his wife, his wife left him, or, all kinds of things like this, right? Oh, I heard, this one, he lost his money, he lost his business, all kinds of things like this. People like to talk about these things. So it tells us, right, the Torah, that a person shouldn't be like this, to be a gossiper, going around from one place to another. Interesting, right, that when you look at the Targum, the translation of the Torah, it talks about ochel kurtzin, right? That's what it says, right? Don't go around eating kurtzin, eating, when it talks about gossip, right? So Rashi explains, what does eating have to do with gossip? What's the connection? You know what I mean? We're talking here about gossiping, and you're talking about eating. So explains Rashi that this was the way of the gossipers. What they used to do is, they used to go from house to house, make a visit. And what happened was that this person was known to be like one of these gossipers. They like to tell stories. So what would happen is that they knew people, right? He was coming for that, to tell stories, and all kinds of things. It's like entertainment. You know what I mean? So what happens is that this guy goes there, sits down, and what they do is they feed him, they give him something, like a dinner or whatever, a snack, some chinkali, some whatever. And while he's eating, he tells them all kinds of stories. I heard about this, I heard about that. So that's why Rashi says, right, that the issue of Lashon Harah is connected also with the issue of eating as well. That's the reason why it's translated that way.
Wow.
Why is that? Because they go to this person like goes around, he makes his rounds, and each house he comes in, and they feed him, and he talks, some stories and all. They listen. Wow, yeah, so everybody stays up to date to all the things that occur, right? That's the idea. But the truth is, you should know, by the way, that in Georgia, I remember when I was a child, there was actually a man like this in Tbilisi, where we lived over there, that was his job. Like, he used to go around and talk, bring stories to people like this. Gossip, gossip stories. He used to come also to us. Can you imagine? He used to come. He used to sit down over there. He wasn't a Jewish guy.
Yeah.
He was a Georgian, a goy.
Yeah.
But he was like very known that he does this, he knows all the stories about what's going on. He would come and sit down, we would give him some food, this kind of that, right? And he would tell us all kinds of stories. So I used to sit there and listen, and I was like, well, who is this guy? Like, he's not my relative, he's not my, he's not from my family. I didn't know what was going on, but this was the idea, So the truth is, right, there's a culture like this that used to exist. I don't know if so much today, but this is the reason why it connected, that these two things are connected.
CNN.
So, right, today we have the press, that's,
Which I think
right.
is worse because it destroys the culture.
Sure, yeah, that's the culture
It's
today, right?
universal.
So that's what the Torah is telling you, right? That don't. So here, right, this prohibition, lo telech rachil, what we're talking about, says the Rambam in Hilchot Deot. It's talking about several different types of, right, gossip that people do. One of them is, number one, is rechilut, right? What is rechilut? Al telech rachil. That's what it says in the pasuk. Don't be rachil. So the word rachil means in Hebrew, it means a peddler. What does that mean? That you go around and you it's like a peddler from place to place, and you spread those those stories. That's the idea, So what happened was that it's rechilut. The Torah tells you, don't be rachil. That's talking about this kind of a thing. What does that mean? That person goes around and he tells people, oh, this person, said about this guy like this, or he said about you like that. Spreads all kinds of stories like this, Yeah, he said like that. He said like this. Or also, right, they can say, I heard this person, he did something like that. He did something bad. He did something which is embarrassing or whatever. Some kind of a plunter, some kind of a embarrassing situation. This is called rechilut. So a person speaks things like this, gossip, right? We're talking about your garden variety gossip that people say. Also, the Rambam, right, talks about the issue of what's considered to be like something which is like in this category. Before we get to that, I just want to also, there's also another category. The Rambam says this is even worse than this category, which is called Lashon Harah, right? What is Lashon Harah? Lashon Harah means that it's something true. Like we said also, Rechilut is also something true. But Lashon Harah is also something true, but it's talking about something like denigrating to that person, Talking about words which denigrate him, put him down, all kinds of things. So what does that mean to denigrate? That means that if he would hear this story that you're talking about him, he would like be embarrassed or cause him harm, as his reputation or financially, things like this, right? This denigration would cause him a certain amount of harm. So if a person says a story like that, even though it's true, that's called Lashon Harah, right? So regarding Lashon Harah, the Torah tells us, right, some severe things about this. What does it tell you? That even though there are three cardinal sins, as we already mentioned, right, several times in the lectures, there are three cardinal sins in the Torah, which is what? Avodah Zarah, right, idolatry, and then we have promiscuity, right, which includes adultery and homosexual and all kinds of things like this, all the things that we mentioned. There's also number three, right, which is the issue of murder, right, killing. So say the sages, also brought down the Rambam as well, that these three sins are considered to be cardinal sins, as we said, and if a person does any one of these sins, and he didn't do tshuva, so what happens is he has no portion in the world to come, because of these sins. If he did tshuva, he has a portion. But if he didn't do tshuva, he has no portion in the world to come. So what we're saying is, right, that besides the fact that he has no portion in the world to come, they also punish him in this world for that as well. He gets punished in this world for that. Also, he has no portion in the world to come. But they say, right, nevertheless, even though these three sins are considered to be very, very severe, but Lashon Harah is considered to be equal to all of them combined. Right? So they say, right, that Lashon Harah is also a form of murder. What does that mean? There's murder with the hand, physical murder, and the murder with speech is Lashon Harah. Right? What does that mean? That when a person goes around speaking Lashon Harah and also goes around speaking rechilut, gossip, so what happens is that he can cause people to die. He can ruin their reputation. He can also cause them physically to die, because the person may take revenge on him, right, all kinds of things. It can cause all kinds of, right, these words of friction, the words of gossip. He said about you, you said about him. The person gets angry, he loses his temper. Go and kill the guy, have him killed, right, whatever. So they say, right, that Lashon Harah is even worse than murder in a sense. What does that mean? That murder, you can only kill somebody if you are in his vicinity, right? If you see him, you can murder him. But Lashon Harah, you can murder somebody. What does that mean? If you live in Rome, you can murder somebody who lives in Syria, right? Or if you live in New York, you can murder somebody who lives in Los Angeles. What does that mean? That Lashon Harah that you said over here in New York can have that person killed in Los Angeles by having this, right, bad this bad friction, right, that it causes between people. It causes all kinds of animosity, right, all kinds of things like this, right? Enmity, right, all kinds of things, hostility, right? It's caused by Lashon Harah. So it's considered to be a very strong, potent form of murder, Lashon Harah, right? Even worse than the murdering by hand, by physically murdering somebody. So therefore, right, Lashon Harah, also the sages said, right, that a person who speaks Lashon Harah, they said very severe things about him, right? It's like he doesn't believe in God. It's like a denier in God. Doesn't believe in God, right? What does that mean? Why? What does that have to do with denying God? Also, it says, right, a person who speaks Lashon Harah, he also has no portion in the world to come. What does that mean? He didn't do tshuva, right? He didn't do tshuva in Lashon Harah. He kept on speaking Lashon Harah all his life. Doesn't, he keeps on going. The Rambam says even something even more severe than that, right, as well. What does that mean? He says, right, that if there is a person like that in the community who's, one of these gossipers, so he's known, that when you come to this guy, he'll always tell you something like some Lashon Harah. You can't get away without hearing Lashon Harah from him, right? So a person like that, they say, you shouldn't speak with him, you shouldn't have any dealings with him, stay away from him, don't be his neighbor even, right? Why? Because if you're going to be his neighbor next door, he'll drop in on you, start speaking all kinds of stories. He'll tell you this story, that story, and all kinds of things. That's the idea. So, right, we had that guy, right? Remember when we were kids? The guy was standing on the 108, the corner over there. When you came to him, you knew that you were going to get a nice big dose of Lashon Harah. Right? So a person like this, he kills people with his mouth. You know what I mean? That's what happened. You go to 108 over there, you stand over there, right? Or you go to the park. You know what it is, right? Over there. You know how it is, right? You meet up with those guys over there, right? Who were playing, Nardi, backgammon. Those Nardi guys. right? So they're and you know what it is, right? They play backgammon, and then there's that girl sitting over there, you know, your friend over there, right? Sitting over there doing her job, and then you have, right? You have all those, you know, derelicts over there, you know, all kinds of derelict people. Then you have also the, what do you call it? You have these people who are speaking Lashon Harah over there, you know, in the park, you know. I heard this happen, I heard of this happen. You know, so you have all kinds of losers over there gathering in one place.
When is it considered not Lashon Harah? I know that you told me that
Yeah.
you taught me that there is a time when you can actually.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Just want to make the point, right, before we get to that issue.
Okay.
So just right to make emphasize the point, right?
Yes.
So this is Lashon Harah. So Lashon Harah is something which is true,
Okay. Oh.
right? But never let's consider to be such a great sin like that, right? It's a true, yeah. So you can say, oh, what do you want from me? You know, I said the truth. Okay, you said the truth, but you're denigrating the person. You know, why to denigrate him? For what to denigrate him? Why do you want to embarrass him? Why do you want to cause him harm like that? That's the idea, right? So that's also considered to be Lashon Hara. So we have now two things, right? We have rechilut, gossip.
Yes.
We have Lashon Hara, and there's even one, right, which is even considered to be worse than that, which is Moti Shemra, right? What does that mean? That you're saying things which are denigrating, but they're also not true as well, right? All kinds of stories they made up, you know, this story, that story, all kinds of things, right? This kind of stuff. So these stories are also very, very, right? Even they're the worst. You know why? Because they're not true. So what does that mean? You're giving a person a bad name. You know, they're going to say about him, oh, you know, we heard this happened to you. You know, this never really happened. You know, but they're spreading all kinds of rumors about this person. This happened, that happened, all kinds of things. We've all been the victim of these things. You know what it is, right? But they say, by the way, the Chazal, Poskim say, it's brought down also Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, he says that when a person speaks Moti Shemra, right, things which are lies about a person, he's not even obligated to forgive him. Let's say he comes to him and says, you know what, please forgive me, you know, I spoke about you.
Wow.
You know, he's not obligated to forgive him. You know why? Because the damage which is caused is so great by these stories that a person can, you know, lose his life like that. You know, loses his parnasah. He can lose his reputation. He can lose his good name. Right? All these things which cause him to be also ostracized from the community. You know, because they're spreading all kinds of lies about him, all kinds of things like this. You know, so this is the way it is. People, you know, so Moti Shemra is considered to be the worst out of all, right? That this is considered to be something which is unforgivable, even, right? The truth is, if you want to forgive him, you could. But what we're saying is, you're not obligated to forgive him. Can you imagine?
Isn't it up to God to ultimately forgive him?
So that's the interesting thing, right? That when we have issue of forgiveness, now we have Yom Kippur coming up, right? So we have to forgive each other, and we need to be forgiven by God. So there's two types of forgiveness, right? If you did a sin which is between you and God, has nothing to do with your fellow man, so God has to forgive you. You know, on Yom Kippur, if you do tshuva, He'll forgive you, right? That's kind of thing. But if we're talking about something which is between Ben Adam and L'Chavero, something which is between man and his fellow, so it's not enough just to get forgiveness from God. You have to also get forgiveness from Him also, because He's your victim. You know, God is not the victim. He's the victim. So therefore, they say, right, that if a person did this, he spoke Lashon Harah about people and all kinds of things, and or he stole from him, right? So he's, you know, one of those guys, right? The man of steel, you know, remember? Right, so people like this, right, who like to steal, and all kinds, they cheat in business, all kinds of fraud. He defrauded somebody. So you have to go and get forgiveness from him on Yom Kippur. You know, before Yom Kippur, you have to go tell him, you know, listen, I'm sorry, you know, I spoke about you, I did this to you, whatever. You know, please forgive me. So it's not enough to get forgiveness from God, because it's also between you and your fellow.
Right.
That's the idea, right? So things like this, they say, right, that if you don't get forgiveness from your fellow, Yom Kippur will not forgive you. Why is that? Because you also have to get clearance from the victim. This is the idea, right? You got to get clearance from two sides, one from God and also one from the victim as well, right? That's the idea. So we have, right, two sides. So these are the main issues of Lashon Hara. They say, by the way, right, there's a story brought down, one of the famous stories, which is about Doeg Adomi, right? This is a story which is pretty shocking. You know, you can make like a movie out of this, whatever. You know, it's quite a drama, right? So what happened was like this, right? That in the generation of David HaMelech, King David, there was all kinds of characters there, you know, roaming around, who were like, you know, not 100%, you know, legit. They were a little bit under the table, you know, shady characters, even though they were quite learned in Torah, whatever, you know, but they were not so clean in their heart. People like this, you know what I mean? So this was one of them was Doeg Adomi. Who was this guy, right? So they say it's a Doeg Adomi. What's the history behind this guy? They say that he was a son of a convert, right? His father was a convert. Why do they call him Adomi? Edom, right? It means he was from Esav. Edom is Esav, right? So he was a convert from the family, one of the families of Esav. There are some opinions that say that he was from Amalek. His father was Amaleki, which is one of the families of Esav. This is the worst, right? There's Esav, there's Amalek. Amalek is considered to be like the worst of the worst, the most unholy, right? The most harmful one. So they say, right, that Doeg Adomi, his father was a convert from Amalek. He himself was born as a Jew. So what happened was that he himself, this guy, became a great Talmid Chacham. He became like one of the great sages of the generation. Can you imagine? How great did he become that he was appointed to be the head of the high court? The Jewish high court. Can you imagine? Rosh HaSanhedrin. He was the head. That's why they call him Abir HaRoim, right? What does it mean, Abir HaRoim? The head, chief justice. That's the idea, right? So this guy was a great Talmid Chacham. But what happened was, right, that once he achieved this greatness in his Torah, afterwards, it was revealed from his deeds, from his actions, that he was also a lowlife. He had a very low character, a very, very flimsy character, very sleazy character. So what was his sleaziness? Right? What happened was that at that time, Shaul was the king, right? Before David became king, Shaul was the king. He was the first king of Israel that was appointed. So what happened was that Shaul, right, he sinned. He did several sins against God because he didn't listen to the prophet, what he told him to do. So what happened was that once Shaul sinned, once or twice, the second time already, he was already removed from being king. What does that mean? HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm going to remove this guy. He already decided he's going to be removed, even though he wasn't yet removed. Right? So what happened was that Shaul, at that time, a bad spirit came to haunt him in his body. He had a bad spirit inside of him. So what happened was that he was always upset, always like feeling bad, feeling down, depressed, all kinds of things like this. He was like in a constant malaise of, depression, all kinds of things like this. So what happened was, right, that they had to bring somebody to help his depression. So what they did, they said, let's bring somebody who plays music, a fiddle player, violin guy, So let's bring him. He's going to play for him, and he'll lose that bad spirit. The music will cheer him up, listening to Blackmore, whatever, those guys. So that was right. Now comes right. So who would they find to be the one who plays for him? They brought David, right? This is how he got into the Malachut, into the kingdom. David was a fiddle player, He played violin. So what happened was that they heard that this guy knows how to play very well, So they told his father, Ishai, they said, what? We heard you have a son who's very musically, talented, whatever, So they said, can you please bring him, and we'll give him we'll pay him a salary so he can play for the king, so the king doesn't get depressed. So what happened was that he started to play for the king, and the king loved him. He fell in love with this guy. Shaul fell in love with David, but what happened was, right, that as time went along, Shaul started to get very jealous of David. Why is that? Because he saw that David was very blessed. God is with him. So he started to get jealous, and he got so jealous that he wanted to kill him as well. The jealousy got so bad that he wanted to kill him because he felt that he was a threat to his kingdom. That he was going to usurp the kingdom from him. That's the idea, right? So what happened was that as time went along, Shaul started to chase David, to kill him, to chase after him, hiring all kinds of hitmen to get him, all kinds of issues like this, right? So what happened was that David HaMelech, once he saw that Shaul was aiming to kill him, he ran off. He ran off from the kingdom. He escaped, and he went to a place. He had no bread, he had no food, and also he had no weapon, to carry with him to defend himself. So what happened was that he went to the Mishkan, right? What does that mean? The Mishkan was the place where the sacrifices were being offered. Before the temple was built, there was a smaller place called the Mishkan. Something smaller, on a smaller scale. So this was like a portable thing. You could carry it around from place to place. So it was in a certain place. It was in Nov, right? At that time, it was in a place called Nov. That was the town that it was in, Mishkan. So what happened was, right, that David went over there, and there was a king, the high priest over there. His name was Achimelech. Achimelech was the high priest, right? So what happened was that David went there, and he told Achimelech, he said, you know what? He didn't tell him, right, the truth, that Shaul was chasing him to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't tell him that story. So he told him was, you know what? He says, do me a favor. I need some food. Like, I'm hungry, I'm starving. I'm going to die, Like, if I don't get some food, dead meat. So he says, do you have anything to eat? So Achimelech tells him, he says, you know what? He says, I have some bread that we made, right? There's something we'll call the lechem apanim, the showbread. So a person is allowed to eat that once it's removed from the table. There was a certain table that they used to put it on. Once it's removed from the table, he's allowed to eat that. If he's pure, he's in a state of purity. So Achimelech told him, he says, you know what? I have the showbread. I have the lechem apanim. I can give you that, and you can eat if you're pure. If you haven't been with a woman, because if you were with a woman, you didn't go to mikvah, you cannot eat that. So he said, okay, no problem, I'll eat that. So what happened was that he ate it, and then also what he did was, at that time, he also asked him. He said, you know what? Do you have a sword? Because I need a weapon. I'm going around. I have no weapon. I have to defend myself just in case something happens. So what happened was that he said, you know what? I have over here a sword, which, who that sword belonged to? It was a sword of Goliath, Goliath, the one that David HaMelech killed. David and Goliath, this whole story? So what happened was that when they killed Goliath, that this sword got left over there in that place, in the Mishkan. So comes and tells Achimelech to David, he says, I have the sword of Goliath. You want that sword? That's the only thing we have over here. We don't have any other sword. Right? So David says, okay, fine, I'll take that sword. He says, nothing like it. It's the best sword in the world. Forget about it, right? So he takes the sword, he eats the food, and he runs off, and escapes. So what happened was, right, that at that time, when David was there was also another guy, right, who was there at that time. And he saw the whole episode. Who was that? There was Doeg Adomi, right? Doeg Adomi was also there. Why was Doeg Adomi over there? He went there to study Torah and to bring some offerings, to bring some sacrifices. So he was over there studying Torah, and he saw David. So what happened was that Doeg Adomi was also one of the servants of Shaul. They both were. David was also a servant of Shaul. He was a general, and also Doeg Adomi was a servant of Shaul. So what happened was that Doeg Adomi, right? What happened was that later on, Shaul asked his servants. He says, "Why doesn't anybody tell me where David ran off to? I gotta get this guy. I gotta kill him. He's a rebel." So he says, "Nobody tells me where he is. One of you must know where he is now. Where he's hiding. I don't know where he's hiding. He ran off." So he says, "Please, if anybody knows where he is, any of my servants," he begs them, "tell me where he is, so I can go and catch him." So who was there? Doeg Adomi was there. You understand? So Doeg Adomi told him. He says, "Your Honor, the king, I saw David where he was. He went to the Mishkan to get some bread, and the high priest over there, Achimelech, he gave him bread to eat. He gave him a sword to defend himself." He says, "I saw what happened over there. I witnessed with my own eyes." Right? So what happened? Right? This Doeg Adomi, he spoke Lashon Harah about David, like this. You understand? So what happened was that once Doeg Adomi spoke this Lashon Harah, what did Shaul do? Shaul was already, at that time, he was like a madman, he was out of his mind. Because he had a bad spirit inside of him.
Right.
So he went over there to Achimelech with his entourage, his people. And he tells him, he says, "Tell me now, Achimelech, the truth," he says. "What happened? David was here and you helped him?" "That's what I heard from people who witnessed this whole thing." He says, "Is that true, what you did?" So he said, "Do you know that this David, he's a rebel against me, and he's liable to death? You helped him like that?" So Achimelech tells him, he says, "I'm sorry." He says, "Your Honor the King, I'm innocent. I didn't know that he was a rebel. I know that he's your general, and I know that every time he comes to me, I have to help him because he's your servant." So he says, "I was innocent. I didn't know anything about that. He was rebel, this, that, nothing. They didn't know nothing about that." So Shaul, loses his mind, right? Like a madman. So what does he do? He says, "You should know." He says, "You and all your servants over here, right? All the priests over here, the Kohanim, you're all liable to death." He tells them, "Because you rebelled against the kingdom, my kingdom. All of you are liable to death." So he tells, right, one of his generals, right? He tells them, he says, okay, he says, you know what? Go now, take your sword and kill all of them, every one of them. Slaughter them like flies, like chickens. Slaughter them, every one of them slaughter. So when he heard, right, when this general, he told him this command, he refused. He said, I'm sorry. He says, Your Honor the King, these people are innocent, how can I kill them? I can't kill these people. He lost his mind, Daikarga, So what happened was, right, that he refused, the general, right? Who was that? That was Avner, right? He was a general, Avner ben Ner. So so Shaul said, you know what? He says, okay, you don't want to do it. He tells Doeg and me. He says, you're the one who spoke, tell me the story. He says, you go and do it. You kill them. Right? You're the one who should kill them. You're the one who told me the story about them. So Doeg Adomi, he went and he killed every one of them. Can you imagine? Slaughtered all of them.
Incredible.
There was hundreds of them like that.
I never even knew that such things went down in the Jewish people.
Yeah. So what happened was, right, that he killed everyone, slaughtered them, Tachra, so every one of them, like this.
I thought we were the most peaceful people.
So what do you see from there, right? That one Lashon Harah caused the death of all these priests, these holy Kohanim. One word, one bout of Lashon Harah.
Is that what the Torah means, that it causes death?
That's it. That's the idea, right? Things like this happen.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another. Domino effect, and that's it, right? That's the idea.
My mother even told me that when some crap was going down in my household, I said to my mother, "You believe this? Somebody knew something," and she said, "Are you kidding me? People can get killed for it."
Yeah. Right. That's the idea.
People can get killed for that.
Yes.
Rabbi, we need 10 per minute.
We're Torah. We're doing Torah. The Bitul Torah. Please don't come for minyan. We cannot help you with minyan. I'm sorry. Asur. It's asur to break a learning. Let me tell you halacha. Halacha says that you cannot break a learning session when you have a shiur kavua to make a minyan, because learning is considered to be Talmud Torah and get kulam. It's considered to be against all the mitzvot. And minyan is only hidur mitzvah. It's not even considered to be an obligation. So you guys should go to Bet Gavriel. 10 o'clock to have minyan over there. Why do bitul Torah? It's not allowed to do that. I'm sorry, but you got to tell the rabbi, please don't send people for minyan. I'm sorry. I already told them several times. Okay, God bless you. All the best. Try to explain to him. If he to show with them, blockheads. Blockheads. These people. What can I tell you? Okay, so as we said, right, that as we said regarding the issue of this, one piece of Lashon Harah is what caused the death of all these, right? So now what happened? Let's say the Chazal that Lashon Harah kills three people, right? The one who spoke Lashon Harah, the one who accepted it, heard it and accepted it, right? And also the one that they spoke it about. It kills all these three people. So you see from this story exactly what happened, right? What happened? The ones who they spoke about Lashon Harah over here, this priest, high priest, he was killed, right? And then after that, because of the sin of killing these priests, Shaul also died. He also died because of the sin.
Yes.
And also Doeg Adomi also died. So all three of them died. The one who spoke it, the one who heard it and accepted it, and also the ones that he spoke about. You can see from there, right, how bad Lashon Harah can be. It kills three. But they say, right, the Chazal, that the person who accepts the Lashon Harah is considered to be worse than the one who said it.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So what does that mean? You have a rule like this, which is brought down, that when a person hears Lashon Harah, he's not allowed to accept it on face value, right? He has to like push it out and say, no, I don't believe you. He's not allowed to believe it. Because the truth is, right, that there's no proof that it's true. There's no proof to that. It could be exaggerated, and all kinds of things like this. So,
what if it's just stupid Lashon Harah? Like, it doesn't even affect me, or I even have no business about knowing it. I can just tell the person, look, you can tell me as much as you want, but I don't even care about it.
Right. Yeah, and I understand. But they say, right, that's exactly what we said, that people like this, you have to stay away from them.
Yeah.
They say that you should not even be their neighbor, as we said, right? That's how bad it is.
So Lashon Harah is forbidden even in a joking way?
That we're going to talk about that, right? It's a good question, right? We're going to talk about that.
If you don't really mean it.
So if you ask this question, right, let's talk about it right now. Let's talk about it, right? So here we're saying, right, that there's also a sin which is considered to be all these things that we just mentioned now. This is from the Torah, right? Because it says, right, lo telech la'achil be'amecha right? Also, lo tisa shem hashav. It says in Shemot, right? In Shemot Yud Aleph, lo tisa shem hashav. That's talking about accepting Lashon Harah. So the one who speaks it also transgresses the Torah, and also the one who accepts it transgresses the Torah. But there's also something lighter, which is considered to be what? The person who does abak Lashon Harah. What does that mean? The dust of Lashon Harah, right? Literally speaking, that's how it's translated. What that means? It's a rabbinical form of Lashon Harah. Rabbinical form. Even though from the Torah it's not considered to be Lashon Harah, but the rabbis also added these things as well. So, as we already mentioned, right, several times in the lectures, how do we know that you're obligated to keep the words of the rabbis? Maybe we don't have to keep their words, only what the Torah said, what God said, But maybe the rabbis don't have to keep their words. Who said we have to listen to them also? That's the question, right? It's a good question. Maybe we can argue with them, and say, I don't agree with you, So what does it say? Where does it say you have to keep the words of the rabbis? It says in the Torah, right? Ve'asita kechol asher yorucha, right? What does that mean? The Torah talks about a case where a person goes to the rabbis to get a certain decision, to render a certain decision. So the Torah says you must do what they say, right? And also, right, lo tasur, don't stray from their words. So a person who doesn't keep the words of the rabbis is also transgressing the Torah as well. Because the Torah commands us to listen to the rabbis. You know what I mean? Even though you don't agree with them, even though you don't understand what they're saying, but these rabbis were bigger, these rabbis we're not talking about the rabbis of today, by the way. What does that mean? I'm explaining to you what I mean. What I mean, that the rabbis of those times, from the Talmud, and before the Talmud, they were able to make decrees on the Jewish people. Today, the rabbis cannot make new decrees. We don't have the power to make new decrees. All we can do is to apply the existing decrees that exist to our situation, to plug it in, to apply it. This is what you need the judgment of the rabbi, to say, this applies over here, this applies over here, according to what it says over there in the Talmud, according to what it says over there in the Midrash, according to what it says in the Zohar Kadosh, or what it says in the Poskim, in the Rishonim, and all these kinds of things. So we're obligated by the Torah. So what does that mean? When a person transgresses the words of the rabbis, he's also transgressing the words of the Torah as well. Because the Torah commands us to listen to them. This is the idea, right? And also in our times as well, if a person goes to a rabbi, right, and this rabbi is knowledgeable, not like these, business rabbis that we have today, that drive Lexuses, we're not talking about these kind of rabbis, right? Drive a Lexus, and this, and have $1 million house. These kinds of, the rabbis, they're not poskim, they're not authorities in halakha. Most of them I'm talking, right? Vast majority of these people, we're talking about a person who's an authority in halakha, somebody who was trained to render halachic decisions, people like this. So a person like that, if you go to him also, you have to listen to him, If you ask him a question, and he give you an answer according to the rules of halakha, according to the general rules of halakha, according to the rules of paskining halakha, of deriving the halakha, so he knows how to do these things, so you have to listen to him also. This is also one of the, it also applies what the Torah says regarding a situation like that. Even though the rabbis in our generation don't have power to make new decrees, they don't have the power to do that. But they can apply, the existing decrees to this situation and say, this applies over here. Right? That's the idea. That's the thing. Okay, but if a person, right, is not on that level, to render decisions, so you don't have to listen to what he tells you, because you may be smarter than him. You never know, right? Okay, he has a Lexus, you have a Mercedes. So what makes him better than you? It's all the same, right? What difference does it make? Okay, that's the idea. Whatever, you have to understand that. So the point is, right, that as we said, there's also several things that are considered to be abak Lashon Harah, rabbinic Lashon Harah. Right? So this is one of them, right? What you're talking about. What does that mean to make jokes like this? Like you don't say outwardly Lashon Harah about that person, but you crack some jokes, and from that it implies certain things. There's certain insinuations there, certain implications, things like this. This is also considered to be, right, according to the rabbis, Lashon Harah. Also, there's another thing which is close to that, right? Which is that what? That a person says, I don't want to tell you what happened, I can't tell you, but he lets him know, right, that something happened. You know what I mean? Oh, I can't tell you, I'm sorry, I want to tell you, but you know what? It's Lashon Harah, I don't want to tell you, forget about that, right? So, you're telling him that there is some Lashon Harah there, right? So even though he didn't say exactly what it was, but rabbinically this is also forbidden, that a person should do these kind of games, the word games. Oh, I can't tell you what happened over there, oh my God, if I would tell you, you would go crazy. Right? So you're telling him that there's something to say there. That's also, right, part of this. And also, right, they say, we already mentioned this before several weeks, right? We mentioned the issue that a person also should not say like this kind of Lashon Harah, right? To say, you go in front of a person who doesn't like a certain person, right? And you start saying good things about him, praising him,
Yeah.
So you know that when you praise him, he's going to say something bad because he doesn't like the guy.
Right.
So that's why they say, right? Don't say good things, praises, before somebody, in front of somebody who doesn't like that person, because it's gonna cause them to say Lashon Harah about him. This is considered to be also a rabbinic form of Lashon Harah, that you're causing that person, you're egging him on, say something bad by saying something good. You know what I mean? This is also considered to be like a form of Lashon Harah. We already mentioned, right, that also there's another form which is close to that, which is that a person, says he went to a person's house, right, and he got some good hospitality there, so he tells everybody, oh, you should go there, that lady, his wife, she's the best cook I ever had, so like everybody now wants to go there, so you're causing him harm by having him now to accept everybody in his house, like making him very crazy. So also like things like this. Right, exactly. That's the idea, right? That's opening up a can of worms. That's the idea, right? That's exactly the point. So things like this also are like considered to be a rabbinic form of Lashon Harah. This is also forbidden, Chazal they say, by the way, in two different places in the Talmud we find one in Masechet Eruvin, one in Masechet Brachot. They say that a person who transgresses something which is rabbinically forbidden, right? He's liable to death. What does that mean? That in Shemaim they could kill him for that, right? In heaven they could cause him to die because of that. So what does that mean? Why is it that we say regarding something rabbinic that a person is liable to death? So you know what the answer is? The answer is that when a person doesn't believe in the rabbinic system, he only believes in what the Torah writes explicitly, but whatever the rabbis say says, that doesn't apply, we can argue with the rabbis, all kinds of things like this. Right? A person who has this kind of belief, he's really considered to be a kofar, like a denier, heretic. Right? This was the problem with Yeshu, This was his problem. They say that the main problem with Yeshu was that he denied the authority of the rabbis, He didn't want to accept their authority. This was the thing, So a person who does that is considered to be like a Talmid of Yeshu, disciple of Yeshu. That's what he is. You understand? So a person who doesn't believe in the rabbinic system, and he mocks the words of the rabbis. That's what he did, right? This guy, right? He mocked their words, and that's why they killed him, because of this sin that they did. A person like that is liable to death. That's the idea. Who mocks the words of the rabbis, doesn't believe in the words of the rabbis. We have to understand one thing, right? That the rabbis have a special, these great rabbis that we're talking about, not these Lexus rabbis. I'm not talking about people like that, right? Lexus rabbi, that's one thing, right? But we're talking about a great chacham. He's really a great scholar, God, a person who's God fearing. So a person like that, God puts His Spirit inside of him, and whatever he says, God wanted that it should be said like that. That's what we say, right? Whatever they say, the rabbis, it's inspired by God. If he's a real scholar, if he's a real, chacham. They say, by the way, right? How far does that go? They say that chacham adif min navi, right? They say a chacham, a rabbi, is better than a prophet. He's superior to a prophet. What does that mean? Even though a prophet gets certain information from God, some dream, let's say, right? God came to him. He gave him some information about the future, something which is going to be. That's called a prophet, right? But Chacham doesn't get these dreams. Sometimes they do, by the way, but even if he doesn't, let's say, right? But his wisdom, right, allows him to render decisions which are even superior to a prophet. What does that mean? That vast wisdom that he has and that direction from God, because he's a God-fearing person, the words that come out of his mouth are considered to be like, from the Lord. That's the idea. Inspired by God, these words. So therefore they say, right, that a chacham is better than a navi. It's better than a prophet. There's a story brought down, right, regarding this. Funny story, right? So they say that there was one big rabbi, his name was Rabbi Akiva Eger. He was a rabbi in Russia about 200 years ago, 250 years ago. So they say about him, right, that he used to have a friendship with a certain king. That king used to like to invite him to his house and to his palace. And he used to speak words of wisdom, speaking about the Bible, all kinds of questions. What about this Bible, that Bible, right? All kinds of things. So what happened was that one day, right, the king invited him to his house, Rabbi Akiva Eger. This guy was a great chacham, he was really top notch. So what happened was that he tells the rabbi, the king, he tells him, he says, I heard, you Jews in the Talmud, you have such a thing like this, that a rabbi is considered to be better than a prophet. So he says, that's very interesting. He says, wow, he says, what I'm going to do? So I'm going to test you if this is true. He says, I'm going to test you. You're a rabbi, right? He says, you're the best rabbi that we have in the generation. You're a top-notch rabbi. I'm going to test you if that's true. So what happened was, right, that he tells them, what he says, I'm going to do like this. When we finish dinner now, right, we'll finish the meal, I'm going to leave the palace. I have to have an errand to run, to make some kind of state visit somewhere. So he says, I'm going to go out from one of the gates of the palace. I'm not going to tell you which one. I want you to write down the envelope, right? Which gate I'm going to go out of. So he says, then once I leave, we're going to open up the envelope and see if you were right. So I want to see if that's really true, right? That you're better than a prophet. So he tells him. So he tells him, he says, okay, he says, Your Honor the King, if that's what you want, we'll do it. We'll do it the way you want. He had no choice, whatever. So what happened was that he gives him an envelope, he puts in something over there, he seals the envelope. So the king now, right, has a dilemma, He says, what should I do now, He says, these rabbis are so smart. I have to fool this, I have to find a way to fool this rabbi. So if I go from the main entrance, that would be like obvious, of the palace. The front entrance, to the White House, There's the back entrance, what it is, right? We talked about that issue, that Obama, he took them from the back entrance, to disgrace them, you know what I mean? So that's the idea, right? So he says, if I go from the front entrance, the front lawn of the White House, so that's obvious, he'll know that, right? That's too obvious. So if I go from the back entrance also, he says, that's also obvious, So I have to find a way to fool this rabbi. That he shouldn't figure out what I'm going to do. So he says, what I'm going to do? So I'm going to break one of the gates of the courtyard, and I'm going to go out from there. I'm going to break the gate and go out. He'll never guess on that, right? He'll never guess such a thing like that. So what happens is like this, right? That he breaks one of the gates, as it comes, the servants, they broke the wall, They broke it down. Chatachetz, So he leaves the gate from there. And then, it came back. It came back afterward, after his run is ran. So he says, let me open up the envelope and see what it says about it. If the rabbi was able to guess this, So what happened was that they opened up the envelope, So what's written over there? Right, this is the halakha that he wrote, the rabbi, He didn't. What does a rabbi know how to write? He wrote halakha, a Jewish law he wrote. So there's a Jewish law like this, right, in the laws of kings, right? Melech poretz gader ve'over. What does that mean? The king is allowed to break the fence and go through, right? It's exactly what he found. He says, wow, he says, this rabbi says he got me. He says, he figured out exactly what I was supposed to do. How did he figure out this? He was a prophet? But because, that he wrote a piece of halakha, which is wisdom from the Torah. So why, what's the idea over here? The idea is that a king is allowed, what's halakha? Halakha says that if a king is going to, let's say, a battle, to fight with his enemies, right? So he has to go to a certain area. He needs to cut through, make a shortcut, whatever. So even though he now has to, in order to get to that place, to take the shortcut, he has to go through private property, trespass. So one of the privileges that a king has, he's allowed to trespass over private property and break the fence and go through, and go to where he needs to go. This is one of the privileges of a king. In time of battle, you know what I mean? It's an emergency. So this is what he wrote. So he guessed so the rabbi was very impressed, right? Once he told the king was very impressed. What I meant to say, right? So getting back to what we said, right? So all these things are forbidden from the rabbis. These ideas. So a person has to also be careful about these things, as well. Not to transgress the words of the rabbis. So the words of the rabbis also a part of the Torah. As the Torah teaches us. What's the difference between the words of the rabbis and the words of the Torah? We're obligated to keep both then. We're obligated. But if there's a doubt regarding the words of the rabbis, we can be lenient. But if there's a doubt from the Torah, we have to be stringent. This is the difference between the words of the rabbis and the words of right. Also, I also want to cover a different aspect of Lashon Harah, right? Which is what? That if a person comes to you, let's say, right, and tells you, teaches the Chafetz Chaim regarding this, a person comes and tells you some Lashon Harah, and you don't really know if it's true or not. But this is something which is like threatening to you. What does that mean? He's coming and telling you, listen, I know a person who wants to kill you. I heard him talking, and this guy wants to rub you out. So he tells him, he says, you know what? In order to save yourself, you better go and kill him first. Tells you something like that, right? So the question is, what do you do in a case like that? We said, right, you're not allowed to believe Lashon Harah. So also maybe this also you're not allowed to believe. So there's actually a story like this brought down also in the Bible, in the book of Kings, in the second part, and also in the book of Jeremiah. It's brought down that there was, after Nebuchadnezzar, right, the king of Babel, he destroyed the first temple. So what happened was that he left over a remnant of Jews over here, some, farmers, a small community of farmers, so they should plow the land, till the land, and he wanted to take that product and use it for his own use. That was the idea, right? So he didn't exile everybody. He left a small community over at that time. So what happened was he appointed one person to be the king of that, like not a king, but like their governor, like a governor. He didn't want to have a king anymore. So who was that? That was Gedalia ben Achikam. That was his name, right? So Gedalia ben Achikam, he was from the family of the kings. He was also, but he himself was not a king. He was just like a governor over there, right? A mayor, whatever, to run the community over there. So what happened was, right, that Gedalia ben Achikam, there was somebody who was his enemy. His name was Ishmael ben Elisha, right? So this guy was also like involved in the Malchut. He was a part of the kings as well. So what happened was that this guy, right, one of the servants of Gedalia heard from people that this guy wants to kill Gedalia. He wants to assassinate him. Why is that? Because he wanted to become the chief of the community, So therefore, the president of the community, whatever. So he was devising some kind of a plan to come and assassinate him. You know what I mean? So what happened was that one of his servants heard about this. He comes and tells him. He says, "You know what?" He says, "I heard over the grapevine, that this guy wants to assassinate you. He's going to come and rub you out." So he says, "You know what?" He says, do me a favor." He says, "Let me go before he comes. Let's make a preemptive strike. I'll go and I'll assassinate him before he comes and assassinates you." He offers him like that. He says, I want to save your life. You poor guy. You're going to be killed." So Gedalia, right? He made a mistake over here. What did he tell him? He told him, he says, "I don't believe what you're saying." He says, He says, I think what you're fibbing me. You're trying to like pull the wool over my eyes. I don't believe what you're saying. You're speaking Lashon Harah. So he says, therefore, I don't believe you. So the truth is, right? He told him, he said, "I don't believe you, and I'm not going to let you go to assassinate him." Preemptive strike, right? So what happened was that Ishmael ben Elisha really came and killed him in the end. He was right, what he told him. You understand? So what happened? Because he didn't accept his words and he disregarded his words, the warning that he gave him, he himself got killed. And by the way, this was considered to be a very big tragedy. You know that we fast because of this every year, because of this tragedy? What does that mean? That the day after Rosh Hashanah, there's a fast day. Rosh Hashanah is 2 days, right? Coming up now. It's 2 days, Rosh Hashanah. The day after those 2 days is a fast day. What is that day called? Tzom Gedalia. We're fasting because of this guy who got assassinated. Can you imagine? This was 3,000 years ago. What does it have to do with us? What's the connection? Why did we fast from him? It wasn't 3,000, it was less than that, like 2,500 years ago. So, what's the connection? You know why? Because they say that when that guy got assassinated, Gedalia ben Achikam, the whole community went into exile. There was no Jews left over in Israel at all. The whole Jewish community got scattered. They all ran off here, there. They got scattered. And everybody had to evacuate. Why is that? What's the reason why they had to evacuate? Because when this guy got murdered, Gedalia ben Achikam, that means now the ruling people, right, the Bavel, were going to come now and take revenge for that. They were going to kill people. It was going to be a big slaughter. So therefore, they all ran off. They were afraid of the king of Bavel, Nebuchadnezzar. So therefore, what happened was that because of this assassination, nobody got left over in Eretz Israel. They all got emptied out. Everybody got empty. Everybody had to clear out. So because of this great tragedy that nobody got left in Eretz Israel, we fast until this day because of that. Can you imagine? We're fasting for 2,500 years because of this great tragedy that occurred. That Eretz Israel was totally cleared out of Jews. No Jews got left over in Eretz Israel. Considered to be such a big tragedy like that. So what do we see from there, by the way, right? That's why Shlomo Melech tells us, right? King Solomon, he tells us, "Al tiyeh tzadik arbeh." It says in the book Kohelet, one of his books, right? Don't be too overly righteous. What does that mean? When a person comes and tells you, right, that somebody's coming to harm you, don't be now tzaddik and say, "Oh, I don't believe it. That's Lashon Harah." So what should a person do, right? It says in the book Chafetz Chaim, right, which is talking about the laws of Lashon Harah. Chafetz Chaim wrote that, right? The famous Chafetz Chaim. He's the one who wrote the famous book about Lashon Harah. So he says over there that when a person comes and tells you something like that, which is threatening to you, so on the one hand, you shouldn't believe him. What does that mean? You cannot believe that's 100% true. But you have to be choshesh, you have to be concerned. Maybe it's true. So you got to defend yourself because of that, You got to take steps to defend yourself. Right, this is not considered to be something which is, so if you now try to be too overly righteous, what is the person who tries to overly righteous? What does he do? He says, I don't believe you. I don't believe you're speaking Lashon Harah. Leave me alone. Yeah, but wait a second. Your life is in danger over here. So you should take steps to defend your life. That's the idea. You understand? This is the reason why a person shouldn't be overly righteous as well. But the truth is, right, the Chafetz Chaim says also other things there as well regarding the laws of Lashon Harah, which are critical to know. One of them is that says the Chafetz Chaim that a person, let's say, right, is not sure. There are certain times as a person is allowed to say Lashon Harah. When is that? When there's toilet, right? When there's something benefit which is going to come out of what he's going to say, he needs to be learned a lesson from there. We have to learn a moral lesson. We have to learn some halakha. So things like this, we're allowed to say Lashon Harah in order to learn a lesson from there, to get some moral benefit from that. By the way, the Talmud, right, and other rabbinic right, sources are full of things like that. Stories about Lashon Harah, about certain rabbis, certain mistakes that they made, certain things that they did which were not correct. Right? Also, we speak Lashon Harah about David HaMelech, right? What he did with Bathsheba, right? That he committed a sin with Bathsheba, right? All these kinds of things. So we speak Lashon Harah about all these people, about the rabbis, about David HaMelech, and about Reuven, who did what he did against his father, right? He disrespected his father. All these things we speak Lashon Harah. How are we allowed to speak Lashon Harah about these people? So the answer is because we're learning a lesson from these things, right? We're learning a moral lesson. The person needs to learn a moral lesson, so he's allowed to speak Lashon Harah. That's the idea, right? It's a mitzvah to speak about these things. So in cases like that, or let's say, right, if you're warning a person to defend his life, as we said, right, that somebody's coming to get him, to assassinate him or to harm him, so you have to tell the guy, what are you going to say now? Oh, I can't say that, it's Lashon Harah. What do you mean you can't say? If you don't say, this guy's going to be harmed. So you got to save him by speaking Lashon Harah. So as we said, right, that there are like these instances where a person is supposed to say Lashon Harah because he needs to say it in order to get some benefit from there. Cases like this. But says the Chafetz Chaim something interesting, right? What about if you're not sure, right? Let's say if a person he's not himself a rabbi, he's not a rabbi, he doesn't know all these law rules, these nuances, little details about these laws, so he's not sure if he's allowed to say in this case or not Lashon Harah. He's not sure, like 50-50, right? Could be that it's allowed, could be that it's not allowed. So what do you do in a case like that if you're not sure? So it says the Chafetz Chaim, when you're not sure, you shouldn't say. You know why? Because the harm outweighs the good over here. What does that mean? That if a person said Lashon Harah and he wasn't allowed to say, there's more transgressions that he's going over than in the case where he wouldn't say. So therefore, right, since there's more transgressions in saying something which could be Lashon Harah, then if you would refrain from saying it in both scenarios, right, in both sides, so therefore it says the Chafetz Chaim, in cases like that, a person should refrain from that. Why is that? Because there's more chance of doing prohibitions from the positive side by saying Lashon Harah than is from refraining from saying Lashon Harah. That's the idea. So if you're not sure, right, whether it's allowed to say, says the Chafetz Chaim, that you shouldn't say it. That's the idea, right? Also, but this also has to be qualified, right? In qualification. What does that mean? That if there's an issue of danger over here, right, a person could be in mortal danger, as we said, like in a case like this, where a person could be killed or assassinated. So in a case like that, he has to tell him, even if it's a doubt. Why is that? Because even though there's a doubt, right, when it comes to keeping a person alive, it always outweighs all the possibilities that you may be saying Lashon Harah. So therefore, in a case where even it's a doubtful that a person may be harmed or killed or whatever, something like that, so in a case like that, even though we're not sure, you're allowed to say, if you're not sure, let's say, you're not allowed to say Lashon Harah, in a case like that, you should say. Why is that? Because pikuach nefesh, right? Doche takol, right? What is it? It pushes aside all the mitzvot, pikuach nefesh, except 3 of the cardinal sins that we mentioned right before. We're not going to get into that now, but the point is, right, that in a case like that, a person who is not sure, so if there's a danger involved, or it's a possible danger of death, danger of harm, all kinds of things like this, so in a case like that, he really should say anyway. Even though he's not sure that he's allowed to say it, or whatever it is, right, he's not exactly certain if it's true or not, let's say, he's not sure that it's true. Also another thing, right, which is mentioned in the Rambam, in the Hilchot Deot, he says that once Lashon Harah was spoken, it became public knowledge. Everybody knows about it already. It's in a newspaper, New York Times, New York Post, Daily News, this, that, it's everywhere, right? So the question is it still forbidden to say Lashon Harah if that Lashon Harah was already publicized in public? So the Rambam says, right, once 3 people know about this, there's no prohibition anymore. It's public knowledge. Everybody knows, Every, grandmother knows about it, the gossipers, they're already, Chatulianian, the Takoki Leviarian, They're all speaking about it. Everybody knows about this. The whole community knows about it, right? The president, the vice president, the rabbi knows about it. So in a case like that, right, says the Rambam, once it got publicized in front of 3 people, there's no prohibition anymore to speak about this. You know why? Because it's already public knowledge. It's nothing you can do about it anymore. So what does that mean? That according to the Rambam, the prohibition of Lashon Harah applies when it's not yet publicized, this thing. Once it got publicized, everybody knows about it. There's no more prohibition. Unless what says the Rambam? Unless the person now his intention is to spread it even more. If that's his intention to spread more, so it's still prohibited. The Rambam says. But if it's not his intention, just we spoke about it, in passing, just like passing words. So says the Rambam that in a case like that, there's no prohibition of Lashon Harah. So the truth is, right, that most of these things that people speak today, it's already public knowledge, So in a case like that, according to the Rambam, it's not really considered to be anymore the prohibition of Lashon Harah. But the truth is, right, that there's also another opinion regarding this, which is Rashi, right? Rashi says that even though this thing is already public knowledge, there's still a rabbinic prohibition to speak Lashon Harah like this, right? So the Rambam holds that it's permitted altogether, and the Rashi says there's still a rabbinic prohibition to say this kind of Lashon Harah. So what's the halacha, right? So the truth is that Chafetz Chaim over there talks about this machloket between the Rambam and Rashi, and after he speaks about it at length, he writes about it at length. He says we should do like Rashi. What does that mean? Not to speak this kind of Lashon Harah, even though it's already public knowledge. So the question is the Chafetz Chaim really the halacha? Mm-hmm. So the truth is, that there are several rabbis who did not agree with this Chafetz Chaim. What's the reason why? Because they say, right, that the truth is, when you have a machloket between Rambam and Rashi, right, according to what it says in several poskim, several authorities, the halacha is always like the Rambam.
I see.
Why? What? Because Rambam was smarter? We're not so sure about that. That's not the issue, right? That's not the issue, that he was smarter or not smarter. The issue is like this, right? They say that the Rambam was a posek, he was an expert in halacha. His works that are written, his books, are mostly halachic works. So that for those books that he wrote are halachically oriented. But Rashi, right, the work that he wrote, his perush, his commentary on the Talmud, on the Bible, is not really considered to be so much psak halacha. It's considered to be more like a commentary to explain to you the understanding of what's going on there. So therefore, right, the Meiri says, one of the Rishonim, he says that Rashi is not really a posek. What does that mean? He's not considered to be the writings that Rashi wrote are not considered to be halachically binding to us. It's considered to be just explanation, commentary, but not halachically binding, right? So much like Rambam. So therefore, right, because of this, there are several poskim who say that when you have a machloket between the Rashi and the Rambam, halacha is always like the Rambam because of this reason, right? So according to that, you have a dispute. Sporty, right? So that's the idea. So therefore, right, according to this, what we just said, the truth is that, right, the halacha is really like the Rambam. What does that mean? The Rambam says it's allowed to say altogether something which was already publicized. And we can, by the way, we can if we say it this way, we can save a lot of people from going to to Gainam, to going to Gainam. You know why? Because a lot of people speak about these things. Public knowledge is everybody knows about it already. 108, the park. They already talked about this for years. That's not considered again Lashon Harah. According to Rambam, people are already well known in the community.
It's like when you call a friend or somebody to tell a new gossip,
Right, that's the idea. That actually there's a story, right, that was brought down from my rabbi, Moren Rabbeinu Ovadia, that one time they say they were sitting, eating on Shabbat, Seudah Shlishit, third meal. So there was, the rabbi there, and some politicians also were there, because he was involved, in the politics as well. So what happened was that the politicians were there, So one of the politicians over there, who was a well-known man, I don't want to mention his name, whatever. So what happened was that he spoke some Lashon Harah, about somebody, whatever. So one of the rabbis, who was sitting there, he said, "Hey, this is Lashon Harah. Why are you talking that?" So what happened was that the rabbi was silent. He didn't say nothing, right? No comment, right? So after the meal ended, right, his son went to him, Rabbi Yitzchak, he spoke to me, he told me about this. He went, Rabbi Yitzchak, who was the chief rabbi now, he went to his father, he told him, he said, he says, Abba, he says, the truth is, according to Rambam, whatever this guy said is not Lashon Harah. You know why? Because it's public knowledge already, the newspapers already talked about it, and this and that. It's been already publicized everywhere. There's no issue. So the rabbi said, you're right. He said, he agreed with him, So you see from there that Maran Lashon Ovadia, he agreed that if you speak Lashon Harah about something which is already known, right, something which is well known already, even in front of three people, there's no prohibition anymore, right? According to Rambam, as we said, right? So therefore, right, we can save a lot of people from damnation, right? From all kinds of things. Yeah, we can Baruch Hashem. That's good for him.
Because when something gets out in the Georgian community,
right?
Every Everybody already knows.
Yes. So the idea is like this, right? That in a case like that, okay, we can tolerate such a thing like that.
Yeah.
Not the end of the world, right? Not the end of the world, but that's only when if his intention was not to to spread it more.
Right.
But in other words, if he has a bad intention, like the Golput or Sachem, he's like one of these kind of people.
So
He's a bad boy.
So what I told you about an hour ago,
Yeah.
when I sat next to you, what is that considered?
This is like the truth is that I don't think
I didn't tell you so you could spread it.
I didn't think that I don't think there was any problem with that. What you said.
I think I brought it out to you that you should know that there's some hypocrisy there.
Right. Regarding that, by the way, I'll also tell you another thing. Since you brought up this issue, right? The truth is, right, that when it comes to people who are wicked, sinners, there's really also no prohibition to speak Lashon Harah about them. What does that mean? It's a mitzvah to denigrate them, just the opposite, right? Yeah. People who are known to be like,
I don't think that person is wicked.
Sinner. People. What I mean to say is that they don't keep the mitzvot, they don't keep Torah, they don't keep Shabbat, this guy. Yeah. So the truth is, right, people like this, it's not. There's really no prohibition to speak about them because other Rabbi, they say, right, the Chazal, that every time you hear the name of a wicked person, a person who's a sinner, it's a mitzvah to even to curse him, that's Kairos, because we don't. But the truth is today, as we said, right, people are not so knowledgeable.
Yeah,
they're not so knowledgeable, so they're like innocent in a sense, whatever, you get the idea. Yeah. But technically speaking, the truth is, right, that a person who's a sinner, who's known to be like a rasha in the community, there's really no prohibition to speak Lashon Harah about him.
Yeah.
But regarding that, right, we have to understand one thing, right? But that's only Lashon Harah. But Motzi Shemra, speak lies, then you're not allowed to say, right? Things like this. That's something else, right? We already mentioned in the former lectures as well, the earlier lectures, that there was also another type of Lashon Harah, which is what? Speaking Lashon Harah about the dead. So we said, right, when it comes to the dead, you're allowed to speak Lashon Harah about them. What does that mean? To say truth, right? Because it doesn't denigrate them anymore, doesn't cause them harm anymore, because they're not in this world anymore. Mm-hmm. But that only applies to what? To say the truth. But if you're saying Motzi Shemra, something which is a lie, so there you're not allowed to say also about the dead as well.
Oh, wow.
It says in Shulchan Aruch, right, that's considered to be, a person who does that is considered to be excommunicated. He speaks lies about people.
Yeah.
Even though they're not alive. But when it comes to Talmidei Chachamim, they say, right, since HaKadosh Baruch Hu very much defends the honor of Talmidei Chachamim, so therefore if a person spoke Lashon Harah about Talmid Chacham, even though he was already dead, right, HaKadosh Baruch Hu still punishes him. As we said in the Gemara, right, Masechet Brachot, that there was one person who spoke Lashon Harah about a certain rabbi, Mor Shemuel, right, and what happened was that something which was on the roof, some blunt object, flew off, the wind blew, and split his head into two, split his brain. Why is that? Because he was speaking Lashon Harah about a certain Talmid Chacham that he passed away. So we see from there that a person is not allowed to speak Lashon Harah about Talmid Chachamim even after their death. But if he's not a Talmid Chacham, if it was true, it's okay. If it was not true, also that you're not allowed to say as well, right? That's the idea. So we have all these kinds of rules, right? Every person has to know. The truth is, right, that the best way to guard yourself from these things, is not to speak a lot.
I was just thinking, just don't talk.
Yeah, just don't talk too much. They say, right, why does a person have 2 ears and 1 mouth? You should be listening much more than you talk. Listen more. Learn more, absorb more, and talk less. That's the idea. That's the idea. Thing. So if a person really wants to guard himself with Lashon Harah, they say, right, the Chazal, one very powerful thing, that when you speak a lot with the multitude of words, there's always a sin. You're always going to come to say Lashon Harah. Right, you can't avoid it, right? Once you talk too much, as long as you're speaking Divrei Torah, it's okay, right? Divrei Torah will guard you.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about mundane matters all the time, all kinds of things, they say, right, limit your words, don't talk too much, because when you talk too much, there's always going to be a sin over there, right? Whether it's Lashon Harah, whether it's Rechilut, whether it's, right, Motzi Shemra, or whether it's speaking lies, or all kinds of things, right? Yeah. All these kinds of things are considered to be, right, all of them are considered to be a great, great, great sin, right? And by the way, the worst of all these, which we'll end it here, right? The worst form of Lashon Harah, you know what it is? When a person embarrasses his fellow in public.
Yeah.
Right? That's the idea.
Yeah.
He causes them to be ashamed in public. As they say that a person who does that, he has no portion in the world to come. Right?
Yeah.
That he denigrated him in public. He caused him to be ashamed in public. So there's a story about that, right? With David HaMelech, they say, right? They used to chide him. So what happened was that he committed a sin, right, with Bathsheba, the famous sin that he did with Bathsheba. Even though the sages say that there was no sin over there, but there was a moral sin over there, right? He took somebody else's wife, whatever. So they used to come, once this matter got publicized, right? So what happened was, right, that they used to come and chide to David HaMelech, chide him, They used to ask him. They said, he says, tell us, David, What's the punishment of an adulterer? They want to rub it in.
Mm-hmm.
What's the punishment for adulterer? Can you please tell us? You're a rabbi, aren't you? Tell us. They want to embarrass him like that. So you know what his answer was, right? He would answer. He said, adulterer, he's liable to death. But if he do tshuva, he has a portion of the world to come. They said, but he said, a person who disgraces the fellow public, he has no portion of the world to come. That's what you're doing to me, right? You're disgracing me in public like that. You're asking me, David, what's the punishment of an adulterer? Can you tell us? So you see from there, right, that was the answer that he used to give them. The answer was, right, yes, okay, you're right, adulterer has a certain punishment, but if he does tshuva, it's forgiven. But a person like you, who embarrasses people in public, you have no shame about that. You have no regret. You have no qualms about that. So you have no portion in the world to come. So we see from there, right, that Lashon Harah can be the worst form of Lashon Harah is when a person does it in public, in front of everybody. Teatri gakata, kino teatri. That's the idea. That's considered to be the worst of all, right? So how does a person avoid all these things? Don't speak too much, right? Just stay with words of Torah, words of wisdom, right? And that's it, right? Stay away from. Don't talk about other people. There's no reason to talk about them. There's no reason to discuss what he did, to analyze these things. Like doing the news. They analyze. What he did, was that moral? Was that moral? What's it matter to you? What does it have to do with you? It's his private matter. What does it have to do with you? Why do you have to speak about these things? What do you gain from there, right? They say the Chazal that the first person who spoke Lashon Harah, the first being who spoke Lashon Harah was a snake, right? He spoke Lashon Harah about Hakadosh Baruch Hu to Adam HaRishon. That's how he got him to eat the apple, right? It wasn't an apple actually; it was different fruit. The Chazal talk about which fruit it was, whatever. But the point is, right, that they say apple. It's not really true, but right. Anyway, the point is, right, that they say, right, that the snake spoke Lashon Harah about Hashem. So they say, right, they came to the snake, and they asked him. They said, what benefit do you get from speaking Lashon Harah? Why did you say it? What did you gain from it? You only lost, So that was. I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. The way is like this, right? That they say that they asked the snake, what benefit do you get from biting people? Why do you bite, people? So the answer was, he answered, what benefit do people get speaking Lashon Harah? What benefit? Why? Then they speak it anyway. There's no benefit. A person speaks Lashon Harah. He doesn't get any benefit from that. So why do you speak it? So the snake, that's his answer. So what does that mean? What does that means to allude that the snake, why he bites people? Because they speak Lashon Harah. He takes revenge on them. Kadosh Baruch Hu sends the snake to bite them because they speak Lashon Harah. What does that mean? The snake says, right, just like those people have no benefit from speaking Lashon Harah, I also have no benefit from biting them. Right? Bite them anyway. To take revenge on them, right? Midah can get midah, measure for measure. Just like they don't get a benefit, and also don't get a benefit. That's the idea. Okay, Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen, amen. Thanks for coming. God bless you.
Amen.
Laila tov.
You're all up, Rabbi.
Yes. What's new, David?
Nothing.